3 years. 3 years since Geon graced us with an F2-60 post in his Discord on October 8th, 2021. 2 years since I actually started saving for one. I know I'm not the only one who said they've been part of the F2-60 waiting room, and I've got some great news for those of you that are still in that waiting room. The wait was definitely worth it. I wasn't sent this unit for free. I had to have incredible luck and battled with the rest of the people that tried to buy one of the 80 units on October 31st. And it goes without saying that I wasn't paid or told to make this review by Geon or anyone. Like many of you, I'm just a huge fan of Geon. I love his products, and I love 60% boards. Also, please remember that these are just my opinions. If you're enjoying your F2-60, don't care what other people think. At the end of the day, all that matters is that you enjoy your board. And if you're someone that doesn't have an F2-60 but wants one, keep in mind that this is just one dude's opinion, and it's okay if you don't agree with what I say. Now, this is purely my opinion. I feel like the F2 line has always been the fancier of the two boards when compared to Geon's pricier non-glare TKLs, with the more classic looking TKL being the F1. The F2 was designed to be stiffer, had a nice Toblerone weight, and unfortunately experienced issues, but in true Geon fashion, he did the best he could to attempt to fix the situation. Not that I don't like the F1. I actually joined the group buy for the raw variant early this year, but in terms of pure aesthetics and for my own tastes, the F2 to me looks fancier, and I've always loved the F2 aesthetic, even being fortunate enough to have gotten my hands on a burgundy variant a few years ago, which I thoroughly enjoyed before I gifted it to a friend. Knowing that the F2-60 was going to happen sometime in the future, and having loved the F2-84, I knew that it was something that I would probably like. If you haven't watched my previous videos where I explained that in terms of the keyboard triangle, I value aesthetics over sound and feel, and even if the F2-60 sounded horrible or was super stiff to type on, I still would have bought it. I'll touch on both sound and feel later on in this review, but it doesn't sound horrible, and it doesn't feel super stiff to type on. So it's definitely a 3 for 3 board for me, checking off all the categories in my opinion. I'll flash the keyboard specs on screen now, but I'll also read them off. You can O-ring mount it like the F2-84, where you cut the long strips of rubber to fit into the grooves between the plate and the bottom case, or you can use these little rubber nubs to run the board plateless, with the nubs attaching onto the PCB and resting between the top and bottom case. It has a front height of 16.8 millimeters, a typing angle of 9 degrees. The top and bottom cases are made of 6063 T6 aluminum. It has brass weights and has those long Frog and F2-84's case feet running across the bottom of the case. Does it result in that same rumbly sound for some people's desk setups? I'll touch on that a little later in the sound part of this review. Here are the weights for each part of the board, with an estimated total unbuilt weight of 2 kilos. My current plateless configuration is just shy of 2 kilos. I wouldn't call it a light board by any means, as it's definitely hefty for a 60%. But being a 60% board, you're not going to struggle to move it around. Currently, there's only an aluminum plate and the plateless kit for the F2-60 being sold by Geon. And while you can use a Heine H60 PCB that uses a daughter board, I didn't have any, so I had to buy one of the Fairholme PCBs that Geon sells, both a soldered one and a hot swap one. What's interesting is that initially, Geon had posted that there would be a 1mm aluminum plate and a palm plate option, so we'll see if those options will be sold for future F2-60 sales. There currently aren't any publicly available plate files either. It comes in WinKey and WinKeyless. This first drop had an option to either get the brass weights with a clear coat, so you can still see that brass color, or a silver clear coat, making the weights look silver. What's super interesting is that there are going to be 2 versions of this board. A brass weight version that was estimated to cost $420, and a stainless steel weight version estimated to cost $450. There were also other colors other than silver originally planned, but for this drop, only silver units of A and B stock were available. The neat thing was that the A stock units were $350 and the B stock units $330, significantly cheaper than that original quote on the Geon Discord posted more than 2 years ago. Plus, these sales are in stock. And even during the Korean Thoktober sale, where over 25,000 orders were placed, I still got my unit within 3 weeks of purchase. And don't worry, even though I don't 100% know Geon's plans, I'd say it's a pretty safe bet that he'll be selling many more units and many more colors in the future. There was even an HHKB option in that initial 2022 post on his Discord. So this won't be the one and only time that you could have gotten an F2-60. He's always been adamant about making more boards due to scalpers and just being a based individual. And I don't see that changing with the F2-60. For this sale, I got the top and bottom cases with both the Toblerone weight and the other weight installed, an aluminum plate, the O-ring that's more than enough to have extras of, extra screws, your choice of feet, I chose gray, but there was a black option, and the case. Keep in mind the PCB was not included. For me, I had some difficulties with installing the daughter board, screwing in all of the weights and the daughter board itself for the F2-84 because the tolerances were so tight. I'm happy to say that I had no such issue with the F2-60. And perhaps it was just a skill issue with that F2-84, but it definitely took me a lot longer to reassemble everything. For all the non-daughter board screws, you use 1 bit size, which is an H2 hex bit. For the daughter board's 4 screws, you use a H1.5 hex bit. The board will come fully assembled, so you'll have to remove the feet, unscrew all of the screws that you see here, remove the Toblerone weight screws, and unscrew the other weight, as well as a single screw to remove the little badge to install the daughter board. For using a plate, I would recommend seating your switches and stabilizers and plate onto the PCB and plugging in the JST before you cut and place the O-rings in their respective grooves. For the plateless kit, you may have some difficulties because they tend to want to fall off, but place the plateless nubs in the cutouts of your PCB. Now, I didn't get enough nubs to place them in every single cutout, so I just placed them where Geon placed his on his initial F2-60 post. You can play around with where you place the nubs, but for my testing, the placement that Geon used was perfect for me. I actually installed the nubs as best I could on the front of the bottom case, then used a plastic tool, or you could use any tool as long as you don't scratch the case, to push in the rest of the nubs on the back part of the bottom case, then quickly put the top case on to situate everything. You know if you've installed them incorrectly if you can't close the top case or have trouble screwing the top case to the bottom case, or if your keys are floating above the case. Regardless of assembling the board plateless or with a plate, after you've got your internals situated, it's time to screw everything together. I could see that for those that may not have experience with an F2-84 or boards in general, it may be a bit more involved than others when building this, especially when compared to the F1, but by no means is this complicated. Oh, the sound. I absolutely love my current configuration, which is plateless, lubed Cherry MX Browns, 3203 for the stems only, oiled springs, which are 67.5 gram thick thock springs, and ABS keycaps, specifically Kikobo Jindo. But take a listen to a few other configurations that I recorded. Now, I've dialed in my preferences when it comes to switches, so I only used 5 different ones. And I also forgot to record the MX Browns with an aluminum plate, but you can get a pretty rough idea with the 4 keycaps that I used, which were DCS, GMK, CRP Round 6, and XMI, as well as the 5 switches that I used: Cherry MX Browns, KTT Roses, Cherry MX Reds, Zepsody Bluebonnets, and the new Cherry Nixies. Do know that there are thousands of different switch and keycap combinations, and what you may use may sound better than what you hear on this sound test. But again, as long as you're happy with whatever combo you decide, that's all that matters. Do I know that by using only the keycaps that I have and the switches that I have, I may not get the best sound out of the board? Yep. And again, because I value aesthetics over everything else, I'm extremely happy with that compromise. And I'm extremely happy with my F2-60 and my current combo. In terms of the rumbliness that some people have heard with their desk and typing setup, it's there, but slight. It's not as significant since it's a smaller board profile, being a 60%. And obviously, since my mics are not attached or connected to my typing desk at all, you're not going to really hear it during the sound tests. But just know that in my opinion, the issue that sometimes plagued the Frog and the Frog Mini and the F2-84 isn't really prevalent here. Although if you have super sensitive ears, maybe you could look into other options like possibly using bump-ons to elevate the board even more, or some other mod. This might be a different story if you use a flexier PCB or a thinner PCB than the 1.6mm FR4 PCBs that are more common, or even a softer O-ring or softer plateless nub material. But the aluminum plate with the O-rings and the plateless kit both resulted in similar levels of flex. It's not a flexy typing feel by any stretch of the imagination, but it's nothing that I'd consider fatiguing either. In other words, don't think you're going to get a super flexy typing experience, but at the same time, it's not so stiff that it hurts my fingers or I get tired typing. You're going to have to press awfully hard to see any sort of flex. Is it as stiff as the F2-84? Well, I wish I could tell you, but it's been a long time since I typed on an F2-84, again because I gave my F2-84 away to a friend as a gift. This is what is most important for me when it comes to the keyboard triangle of aesthetics, sound, and feel. Obviously, I wouldn't have bought this board if I didn't think it looked cool. Aesthetics is also super subjective, so what I think may look cool may not be what you think looks cool. This is basically a mini F2-84. Has that same Toblerone weight, the way that the other weight peeks out on the bottom, the small and subtle Geonworks logo above the USB cutout, the chamfers on the top case, the design, and everything that made me fall in love with the F2-84 is here in the F2-60. And I love it. We usually don't look at the bottom of our boards unless we're showing it off, so it's not a super big deal for me personally, but the fact that the screws are hidden under the feet makes the board look super clean. Now, I obviously wouldn't have bought this board if I had thought that I would hate it, and it's very hard for me to hate a board since I make a decision on aesthetics. And unless a board looks significantly different in hand than from the prototype pictures, I'll usually be happy. Sound and feel are not as important to me as aesthetics. If feel is very important to you, especially having a flexible typing experience, this probably isn't the board for you. Also, if all you care about is the best sound and a godly spacebar, while I think this board holds up very well in the sound category, especially with Plateless Cherry MX Browns, don't expect it to be the best sounding board ever. Although again, I only tried a few combinations. I'm sure if you experiment with other switches and keycap combos, you could get a better sound. But right now, I'm really happy with the way that it currently sounds for me, so I don't bother experimenting past what I've done. But if you love the looks and aesthetics of the board, especially if you loved the F2-84 in terms of looks, yeah, this little guy hits the spot, especially since it's less than the initial quotes for the cost. So obviously this is an easy recommend if you like the F2-84 and you wanted it in a 60% layout. These are just my opinions. I'm also positive that Geon will sell more colorways of the F2-60 in the future, so don't think that you missed out or need to spend more than retail on the aftermarket for one of these units. Don't have FOMO. Thanks for watching, everyone. I love you all, and see you next time.